Hey there folks, Graham here and welcome to the channel. Today we're talking about MIDI merging, in particular this little guy here, the Quadra Merge from MIDI Solutions, why I got one and what I use it for. Firstly, what is a MIDI merger? Well, it's a little box that you can connect multiple keyboards to in order to merge their MIDI signals into one or more outputs. So, for example, with the Quadra Merge, you can connect the MIDI outs from 4 keyboards to the 4 MIDI ins on the Quadra Merge, and the MIDI signals from each of those 4 keyboards will be merged into either of the 2 MIDI outputs on the Quadra Merge. What's the purpose of all that, I hear you say? And how do I use it? Well, let me show you what I do with it. So, in my studio I have 4 hardware synths, a Behringer DeepMind 12, an Arturia Matrix Brute, a Behringer Neutron and a Yamaha Modx 8 Plus. I also have 2 MIDI controllers, a Keystep 37 that sits on my desk in front of the PC, a Keylab 61 and also a Roly Seaboard Rise 49. Currently I have the Keystep 37 on my desk in front of the PC with a MIDI out cable running to a Quadra through box, also from MIDI Solutions. From the Quadra through I then have 4 MIDI cables running from the 4 MIDI through ports on the Quadra through to the MIDI ins on each of my hardware synths, each of which are set to separate MIDI channels. With this setup I can play any of my hardware synths using the Keystep 37 on the desk in front of me. So if I set my Keystep 37 to channel 1, I can play my DeepMind. And if I set it to channel 2, I can play the Matrix Brute. And if I set it to channel 3, I can play the Neutron. And if I set it to channel 4, I can play my Modx 8. By the way, I've got a separate video on my channel covering the MIDI through box in more detail. So that all works great, but I wanted a bit more flexibility in what I can use to play each instrument within the studio. For example, if using my DeepMind 12, I wanted to be able to use the Keylab 61 that sits above it to play the Modx 8 that would be behind me, or use the Keylab 61 to trigger the Neutron that sits down underneath my Matrix Brute, or I wanted to be able to play any of my hardware synths using the Yamaha Modx 8 Plus, taking advantage of its 88 keys. And I couldn't do that with my current setup, not without rerouting cables or changing routings in the DAW. Enter the MIDI merger. Now what I have is my Keystep 37, my Keylab 61 and my Modx 8 Plus all connected to the MIDI Solutions Quadra Merge. The Quadra Merge is then connected from one of its out ports to the in on my Quadra through, and then each of the 4 through ports on the Quadra through is connected back out to each of the 4 hardware synths. Now what this means is I can still use my Keystep 37 to trigger any one of my 4 hardware synths, but I can also use my Keylab 61 to trigger any of my 4 hardware synths, and I can also use the Modx 8 Plus to trigger any of the other 3 hardware synths. So again, here's the Keystep 37 still playing the DeepMind 12 on MIDI channel 1, the Matrix Brute on MIDI channel 2, the Neutron on MIDI channel 3, and the Modx 8 on MIDI channel 4. But now I can also use my Keylab 61 to play any one of my hardware synths. So on MIDI channel 1 I have the DeepMind 12, if I change to MIDI channel 2, I have the matrix brute. And if I change to MIDI channel 3, I have the neutron. And if I change to MIDI channel 4, I have the Modx. And also, I can use my 88 key Modx 8 to trigger either the DeepMind 12, the neutron, or the matrix brute. So here's the Modx playing itself. Now here it is playing the DeepMind 12 on MIDI channel 1. Now here it is playing the matrix brute on MIDI channel 2. And finally here it is playing the neutron on MIDI channel 3. All of this is achieved without having to mess around with any cables, not having to go into your DAW and change any routings. It's just there and available all the time. And a lot of the time I like to just turn on the hardware synths and jam without having the PC or DAW on, because sometimes it's a bit of a distraction. And this just gives me ultimate flexibility on which keyboard I can use to trigger which synth. So that's what a MIDI Merge box does and how I use it. The beauty of the Quadra Merge is that it's also very expandable. So for example, if I were to get 4 more hardware synths, I could get another Quadra through box and then run the second out from my existing Quadra Merge into that second Quadra through box, and then I would be able to play all 8 of my hardware synths using either the Keystep 37 on my desk, the Keylab 61, or my big master keyboard, the Modx 8 Plus. There's also various other uses for this little box, such as merging the signals from various keyboards or sound modules into one MIDI interface for input into a computer. Well, that about wraps things up, and I've left a link in the description of this video to the MIDI Solutions website where you can check out the Quadra Merge, or indeed its smaller or larger siblings with 2 or 8 ports. And I hope you've enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you have, please don't forget to like, subscribe and ring that bell, as it really does help me to continue making content like this for you. But for now, I've been Graham, take care and catch you later.